Welcome to the nominee interviews for Epoch 7. With me today, I have Scrubadubdad. What is going on, my man?
Hey, thanks for inviting me here, and I'm glad to be here.
Not man, I'm glad that you are here. I'm actually really excited to see what kind of answers you give to the questions that we bring. So let's not waste any time. Let's jump straight into it, man. The first question I'm going to ask you is it's a topic that isn't going away. It's about the council compensation. What are your thoughts on the current structure of the council salary? And also, what do you think about the IIP that's just passed, changing the payout from stablecoins back into Illuvium tokens?
All right, so definitely thank you for that question. You know, the way I would put it is that my take on the current structure of the council pay, in one word, would be underutilized. I have been very vocal about the pay of council members being too much for the duties and responsibilities laid out in the white paper and the IIP before. But at the same time, I do recognize that there is a need for competitive pay because it's required to attract the right talent necessary to make proper decisions for the DAO, right? So if we're looking at it, definitely would want to lower the amount, maybe to make it a bit more commensurate to what council members in current governance structure V1 is, where it's just basically meetings and voting on the IIPs and engaging a little bit with the community. And at the same time, I do want to increase maybe like the duties and responsibilities in which way that we can extract more value with the council members. And my take probably on the current IIP, wherein we shifted from stablecoin back to ILV. Honestly, this is something that the CFO Danny has recommended, and being the expert, I would probably submit to his wisdom on this one. And if we're looking at the motive or the reasoning behind it, it's definitely much easier in not having to convert some of our tokens from ILV back to stablecoin and then transferring it out, while we're maintaining the stablecoin required for some of the overhead costs of the team itself. So I'm definitely okay with that.
Yeah. So I want to dive in a little bit deeper into something that you've mentioned about the responsibilities and duties of the council members. So you said that you'd like to lower the compensation based on what they're doing now. Based on your perception, and it's hard because we don't know the ins and outs where we're not there, but based on your perception of what you're seeing, what do you think a fitting compensation is for what you believe they're doing now?
So you're absolutely correct that in the sense that we don't know what else they are doing, right? How often they actually meet, what kind of discussions they do, and if there's anything in the background they're contributing to the DAO. So it really is difficult to sort of like place a peg into how much it is. But coming from what I can read off the white paper and the recent IAPs regarding council duties, you could actually see or tell based on the past IAPs being passed that they're probably voting on two or three, at most IIPs within a 3 month epoch, and then I think in for this particular 6 month epoch, they've only had maybe two or three as well. So using that as a basis, as well as the number of times they meet, the current 5,000 USD stipend that they're getting is a bit too much. That's enough already to actually get someone as a full time, uh, employment in the team. And the way I see it is that they're it's not a full time job, right? You get to meet probably once every 2 weeks, three. It's a bit sudden, or there's something that's important to talk about. So I would like to think of it more of like a per diem setup. And if we're going to use that as basis, then maybe anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000 would be something that's palpable to the palate of people who have the expertise and the type of experience to be able to lead the DAO in that particular position.
Yep, yep. All right. So this next question is something that we've actually been asked by the community, and it's something that they've kind of pushed onto me. So I will relay that to you, and that is,
Sure.
if you are elected, would you be willing to forfeit your council pay for the good of the Illuvium runway?
Okay, so that is such a loaded question.
Yeah,
There,
that's
Jared.
that's why I put it on the
Uh,
community, not me. I put it on the community.
yeah. So forgive me if my answer is like a hedge, right? It's a yes and no kind of setup. Yes, I am definitely amenable to forfeit my pay if exigent circumstances dictate. That's number one. So if our runway is actually shorter than expected and there is a need to do so, that is definitely something I would say yes to right away. Secondly, is more of like a condition maybe, is that I would say yes also if it's just temporary. And it's not even about my payment during my own epoch if ever I'm elected, but even prospectively, right? Because I thoroughly believe that we should be paying these people who are making these decisions for the DAO, right? And if it's a temporary setup, no problem, but we should still maintain payment once we've actually stabilized the funding of the DAO runway.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. That makes sense, and I think it's a safe answer as well. The yes and no answer. It's a safe approach. All right. So, in the last 6 months, how have you contributed to Illuvium, and why do you believe that this contribution has been beneficial to the DAO?
Yeah. Okay. That is actually a really good question. I've been thinking about it a bit. I'd probably say number one would be founding Illuvial. Um, well, it all started when we started creating infographics, and we saw that it was actually providing a lot of value to the community members, especially new people, and so that we've expanded into a website with the ethos that we want to educate newcomers, easily onboard them into Illuvium ecosystem in terms of the lore, the information needed to play the game. So that's definitely number one. Second would probably be the other project that I'm working on, which I hope would be providing a lot of value again to existing players and users. Um, I'm part of I co-founded another Illuvium-centered project, and a bit of alpha leak here is that two of their advisors are actually team members. That would be Kieran and Ben. So if Illuvial is something for newcomers to get onboarded and get accustomed to the Illuvium ecosystem, this new project provides, I guess, value in terms of as you play the game. You know, so that is another thing that I'm doing for the DAO and for the community. Another would probably on a more personal level is the content updates that I try to share that I find on Discord. Every time I wake up in the morning, I scour through all the messages in general and other channels just to get those tidbits and screen capture them and post them before on the Infoluvial Twitter. But now I do that on my personal Twitter as well. And another more recent thing that happened is that I was lucky enough to be asked to consult on the governance V2 IIP. So I provided some insights there, provided my comments, and I hope that it was actually able to guide Rich in drafting it. And I hope people will like that information once it's been shared. Yeah, and I guess the last one probably is that I'm very open to the community. So anytime they would ask questions, even if it's not directed at me, I try to answer to the best of my knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah, nah, understood. That makes a lot of sense. All right, this next one I'm actually very curious about. Can you please tell me what unique value proposition do you think that you can offer that you think separates you from the other nominees?
Yeah. So that is another hard question considering the
Yeah,
nominees right now are stacked, right? You get
yeah,
so
yeah.
many good nominees, and it's a bit hard to try to find that
Yeah.
value proposition that's unique. But
Mm.
probably amongst all of them, I would say three things. First being my experience in making high level decisions and risk assessment both due to my position as a board director in a bank for the past 8 years, and my current position as part of senior management in a multinational company as the head of legal there. And obviously, in connection to that, it would be my legal expertise whenever it can be applied in the DAO setup, as well as if it comes to IIPs, and of course the legal risks associated with it as well.
Mm.
And lastly, I would probably say my experience in creating, these community websites such as Illuvial and the project that I'm working on right now. It provides me all these wealth of knowledge in terms of Illuvium, and I get to deep dive more into what kind of value I can extract and provide to the community.
Yeah, yo, I love that you just said, yo, it's gonna be hard. It's a stacked community, stacked domination. You come out with three things. Yeah. All right. Yo, it couldn't have been that hard. All right. So let's move on to the next thing. We've talked about V2, governance V2 a couple of times now in this conversation. So we're closer than ever to governance V2 actually being proposed. What
Yeah.
do you think? What do you see as the major flaws of governance V1? And if it were up to you, how would you amend them in governance V2?
Hmm. Yeah. I definitely don't want to like go into like the surface level things, but then the very first one that brings to mind really is the delineation of duties and responsibilities of council members as to what they can and they cannot do, right? Because it's not as clear um, as to what kind of reach they have, what kind of influence they can do in terms of the direction of the DAO and the development of the game, right? Because if you're looking at the white paper, it's just really wait for an IIP, vote on it. I mean, I hate to make it that simple,
Yeah.
but that's basically is right. In the past, how many epochs? 6 epochs. That's basically what's been happening, at least from the community side of point of view, right? So another is again connected a little bit. There's like minimum responsibilities being imposed on the council, and the visibility and maybe transparency as to what they're doing to the extent that they can share to the community. Gov V2 actually does address part of it, but if
Mm.
there's anything that I would introduce, and I was actually planning to propose this before, but then Rich was telling me that Gov V2 was pretty close, so I kind of set it aside until this comes out. But I wanted to propose that the council members would have required engagements with the community, in a sense that maybe twice a month you'd have like a council town hall, and
Yeah.
that's where they're able to like discuss the things that why they voted on certain IIPs this way, or what kind of issues they're dealing with right now, or what kind of ideas they'd want to like put up in the future during the rest of the epoch that they're sitting as a council member. And it's just a way that people can easily open up to the council, and we've seen how effective town halls have been
Yeah.
with Kieran holding that in. And I feel that there's that connection that you get to build with your council members, especially since they're supposed to be your representative.
Yeah. No, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting to see what the community feedback is on Governance V2. I'm very excited for it, and I can't wait to see what they actually say about it. I think it's a massive change. So
Yes, I agree.
so this next question is a bit of an interesting one. Let's say you do get elected, and let's say governance veto was approved during your term, maybe a week in or a month in, whatever it is. Would you be willing to cut your term short to conduct a new election just so we're able to transition into V2, potentially risking your position on the council?
Absolutely, without a doubt. It's a resounding yes for me. If you actually saw the nomination that I put, one of my goals there was really to get governance V2 on the voting table, pass it, and implement as soon as possible. I do have the I would say the opportunity to have actually read the governance V2. So I know as a personal fact that this is way better than the current setup that we have. And it is a step in the right direction, probably even 5 steps in the right direction, right? So
Yeah.
If it means me cutting my my term as a council member, if I was ever elected, I would say that I actually did my job as a council member by doing so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that I realize the more I ask that question, the more I realize it's a pretty easy layup.
Yeah, it is.
So
It is.
yeah, yeah. Let's go to one that's a little bit harder then. So
Yeah.
we've kind of mentioned this a few times now about council duties, responsibilities, and things like that. So let's say that it was up to you, Scrubs, where you had to write a formal IIP to clarify what council member duties are, what their time commitments are, and what your expectations of them are. What would be included in that IIP?
Yeah. Okay. So I actually struggled with this particular, thought in mind, because the mindset has to be shifted a little bit here, right? Because we're sort of connecting it with the pay, right? Like because of the huge pay, it should be like a full-time job when in fact it's not supposed to be. Being a council member isn't supposed to be a full-time job. So I would strongly disagree with any kind of time commitments in a sense that there should be like a number of hours that they should be working for the DAO or anything like that. But I would push more into the engagements wherein there is that requirement for them to attend certain engagement. So this circles back to what I said a while ago, wherein you require the council members to attend, council town halls, AMAs, all these things, wherein people are able to ask and have an open forum with the council member, whether it be just one of them or even a panel of them, because this is what you're supposed to be doing. You're engaging with the community, getting the sentiment from them. Discord right now isn't like a great space because it's currently being just a couple of people, probably like 10 to 15 people who are very vocal, and it really pushes people back, and they're not able to really voice out what they want to. So
Yeah,
I hope that the duty then of the council member is to create that safe space for them in this open forum, or maybe even use um, like a Dropbox, and then they have to answer all these questions, right?
yeah,
They can do that probably in the web, if there's like a website where you can just send a message to your council member, and then they can address that during the council meeting and
yeah,
whatnot, things like that. But then what the expectations are. Honestly, this falls in probably like what kind of requirements we should be imposing as a minimum for a council member to be seated as a position, right? Because right now, with governance V1, it's a hodgepodge. Like there's no requirement at all. But with governance V2 coming in, and these subcommittees, shout out to Annie. If you actually watch his video, he has this structure that indicates like if you're a game subcommittee,
yeah.
you have
The
this
ECG
finance
model.
or whatever. Yeah, the ECG model. That's actually a good basis. And if I'm using that without having to share too much about the Gov V2, you'd use that as a requirement now. If you're going to be a game part of the game sub council or subcommittee, then you should have some sort of expertise or background in gaming for you to actually be a specialized council member for that. The same way with
Mm.
finance, some like maybe a CPA or a business analyst or something like that, and then in governance, someone who'd be more into I guess, higher level positions, who has made decisions on a higher level and things. So that's what I hope that we could implement when it comes to the council members, because then in you're eliminating the whole why are we paying them so much for this, right?
Yeah,
When you can actually see, you're paying for their expertise. They know what they're talking
yeah.
about. They know what you're going to be sharing and ideating with the IAPs. You're paying exactly for that knowledge and that
Mm.
experience. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. All right. So the last question I have for you, and it's not one that I've sent to you just because it's kind of spur of the moment. It's a
Yeah.
conversation that's been happening just in the community recently, and that is about the potential of moving the revenue from Illuvitas, instead of doing it as a distribution, moving that into the vault to help with the runway. What are your thoughts with What are your thoughts on that? I'm going to leave that open ended and just let you have fun with that.
Yeah. I'm actually been participating with that particular thread, and initial thought obviously is that it's good for the DAO. It's a great idea, right? That's surface level kind of thinking right now. But then you have to go dive deeper into the repercussions, the kind of impact it might have, and you get a question. Get ask the hard question as, is it the right time to do so? Um, with Illuvatars, it seems to be that we're going to be selling it probably in a longer period rather than like a month or 2 months. It's going to be like anywhere from 3 to 6 months, right? Because it's a collection setup. We want to try to get to collect and that opportunity to do so. So to actually make a decision right now as to foregoing rev this so that it goes to the DAO vault right away, it's a hasty decision without having that much kind of information. And Kieran recently actually answered and provided a little bit more insights wherein we do have other revenues coming in, we do have other levers that we can pull in terms of extending the runway, and we've seen how the team has downsized from 200 plus now to 140 as per Chris. So there is a lot of movement happening in terms of extending the runway. So the initial question here is that, do we need to actually forego rev this right now? But if you ask me 3 months down the line, 4 months down the line, when we have a better idea as to how much the runway is going to be, then that's something that we should be bringing it up again. And
Yeah.
how big of an impact now? Because another thing here is that, what if it's just a drop in the bucket, right? Like Illuvatars, oh God forbid, doesn't like take off, and it's like a drop in the bucket, and then now you open up this possibility that a council can decide on foregoing rev this at any, I don't want to say any given point, but it's a
Yeah.
possibility later down the road. um, Another thing that I actually wanted to bring up to them, probably once Go V2 is out and whatnot, was that I actually wanted some sort of referendum in terms of changing these kind of core aspects of the white paper, because if you're foregoing RevDiz, you're changing the white paper extensively, right? And it affects everyone, every ILV stakers, and that's huge. And it's not something that 80% would say yes, and then 20% can would be the most vocal one saying no, it's going to ruin the whole thing and whatnot. We expected this is the what's written in the white paper. So we got to show that it's not 5 people who's deciding it, it's actually the whole community
Mm.
deciding through some sort of snapshot voting, the same way how we voted for our council members.
Yeah. And that makes sense. That makes sense. All right, yo, Scrubs. Appreciate you for coming on, man, and sitting in the hot seat and answering these questions with such grace. So before I let you go, man, is there anything you want to say to close this out before we end this?
Honestly, to all those watching, it doesn't matter who you vote for. I just want you guys to vote. I believe that this epoch is actually important, just for Gov V2, right? That in itself is huge, and we definitely need members who can sift through the whole V2 and see the rationale on it, and see that it's actually for the benefit of the DAO as a whole. At the same time, I also feel that in the next 6 months is also huge in terms of the releases coming, and it would be really good for us to have V2 in place by then. So definitely go out there and vote. Yeah, that's probably my message to
Awesome.
everyone else. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, yo, appreciate you, man. I appreciate you for coming down. And for everyone that's watching, thank you guys for watching. Make sure you follow this channel to keep up to date with everything governance. There's going to be a lot of governance content on this channel moving forward. So make sure you stay up to date. But anyway, we appreciate you guys and peace out.